Hi, my name is Anastasia Alexopoulos, and I decided to do my Unit 1 assignment on Lather, Nothing Else. Lather, Nothing Else, a short story by Hernando Tellez, tells the story of a barber whose customer is Captain Torres, a military captain who's responsible for the deaths of members of a resistance organization. The story focuses on the barber's inner conflict of having the opportunity to either provide Captain Torres with the best shave, something for which he's well known, or seize this opportunity to kill him with a sharp shaving razor. Hernando Tellez was a Colombian journalist and author who, although wrote for some of Colombia's most popular newspapers, became more well known after the publication of his short story collection, Ashes in the Wind. Lather, Nothing Else was one of his most famous stories and is widely studied today. The story is most likely depicting a time of civil war in Colombia from 1948 to 1958 known as La Violencia, or the civil unrest that Tellez would have experienced in Colombia throughout the early 1900s. The story takes place at a barber shop in a town that is experiencing some sort of civil or political conflict. It is a scorching hot afternoon, and because of the violence in the story, it is most likely set in the early 1900s, a period of civil unrest in Colombia. The story features two main characters, the barber who is the protagonist and who experiences inner conflict about whether or not to kill Torres. The antagonist is Captain Torres, and he is a military captain. Each have strong and opposing beliefs and are very serious about their values. The exposition of the story is the first couple of sentences, which provides the reader with a sense that the story will be suspenseful and serious. The story starts with the following: I was stropping my best razor, and when I recognized him, I started to shake. Then Captain Torres states, "It hot as the devil, I want to shave." This makes the reader want to read on and find out more about what is going to happen. The rising action is when the barber starts contemplating killing Torres with the razor while he is shaving him. This builds up suspense to the climax of the story. The climax of the story is when the barber ultimately decides not to kill Torres. He contemplates all the consequences he would have to face if he did it. For example, what he would do with the body, how people might think of him, if he would need to flee the town, etc. He ultimately decides killing him is not worth all of the repercussions. The falling action is when Torres gets ready to leave. It shows the barber has made his decision to not kill him, and we are no longer in suspense reading to see what will happen. The resolution is when Captain Torres states, "They told me you would kill me. I came to find if it was true. But it's not easy to kill. I know what I'm talking about." This is when the story ends and all the conflicts throughout the story have been resolved. The two types of conflict in this story are man versus himself and man versus man. The barber has an internal conflict with himself because he is debating whether or not to kill Captain Torres. On page 2, the barber says, "I was secretly revolutionary, but at the same time, I was a conscious barber, proud of the way I did my job." He is contemplating the different outcomes of his actions. On the one hand, he feels a responsibility to kill Torres, and on the other hand, he wants to not only do what he is known for, which is being an excellent barber, he wants to do the right thing. The external conflict is between the barber and Captain Torres. They have opposing political beliefs, the results of which include Torres executing multiple people, and the barber is considering retaliation by killing him. One major theme in Lather, Nothing Else is inner and external conflict and having to make tough decisions that relate to your personal values and morals. Some quotes that show this are when the barber states, "And so which will it be, murderer or hero? My fate hangs on the edge of this razor blade." Also, "But I don't want to be a murderer. No, sir, you came in to be shaved, and I do my work honorably." Both these quotations illustrate how difficult it can be making decisions based on the reality of a situation and one's personal values. The mood of the story is suspenseful as we follow along the barber's contemplation about whether to kill Torres or not. He weighs the pros and cons of doing so, and this engages readers to see what he ultimately decides to do. The mood is also distressful as the characters live in a society of conflict and hatred, where people are losing their lives as a result of political unrest. The barber thinks to himself, "I am sure that with a good strong blow, a deep cut, he would feel no pain," as he considers killing him. Through the author's description of the setting, the characters, and the conflicts, the tone is serious, tense, and makes readers feel anxious. An example of one quote that depicts this is when the barber is shaving Torres and thinks to himself, "And this was indeed a special customer. How many of ours had he sent to their death? How many had he mutilated? It was best not to think about it." Thinking about how many people have lost their lives shows a serious and dark tone of the story. Imagery is the use of visually depictive language that creates an image in your mind. Some examples of this in Lather, Nothing Else are, "But the blood would go flowing along the floor, warm and edible, not to be stained, until it reached the street like a small scarlet river." Another example is when the barber says, "The skin will yield like silk, like rubber, like the straw." Both these quotations use descriptive words, which make you picture an image in your head when reading. For example, I picture the scene of blood flowing along the floor onto a street when the author describes it as warm, inedible, etc. The title in itself, Lather, Nothing Else, is an example of foreshadowing. It is an indication to the reader of what the outcome of the story will be. Although as you read through you wonder if the barber is going to kill Tors or not, the title alludes to the fact that he won't be using the razor to kill but only for a shave. One thing I've learned from this story is how difficult it can be to experience internal conflict. The barber was very torn between doing what the other revolutionaries might have expected him to do and killing Tors, or doing what deep down he believed was right and simply doing his job. The following quote, so it's going to be very difficult to explain how it was that I had him in my hands and then let him go in peace, alive, clean-shaven, illustrates how conflicted the barber was feeling. Another lesson that I can very much relate to is that two wrongs don't make a right. From when I was younger, I was always taught this. For example, if someone is being mean to you, being mean back won't make it better, and it doesn't accomplish anything. It is more important to be the better person and do what you believe is right. Similarly, the barber feels that even though he sided with revolutionaries and Tors has killed many of his people, he is not a murderer and would gain nothing from hurting him. He thinks to himself, no one deserves the sacrifice others make in becoming assassins. What is to be gained by it? Nothing. The story Lather, Nothing Else really made me think about how horrible it must be to live in a country where there is so much civil unrest. I can't imagine killing each other because of different political beliefs or having a government that is so harsh to its citizens. Although this story is from many years ago, there are countries all over the world experiencing this today. There is so much suffering, and it seems human beings treat one another so badly for no real valid reason. I feel very fortunate to live in Canada, where we have freedom and rights. After analyzing this story in detail, I found it to be very thought-provoking. I gathered many lessons which I initially didn't see until we were looking at all the different aspects of the story.